Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to invite Joey from nuts.com to join us for this customer conversation. We have been having these series of customer conversations, primarily to bring out, the significant aspects of OKR and performance management, implementations. And in that context, I'm very happy to invite Joey for coming here and sharing his experiences, right, with all of us, right? So thank you very much, Joey, for joining today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Okay, great. So Joey, probably, I've seen the nuts.com ads quite a few times on YouTube, but probably, for the audience, it would be great if you can share with us, a little bit of a background about nuts.com as an organization, right? What do you do? Maybe the history of the organization, as well as your own role in nuts.com. Yeah.
Okay. So nuts.com was founded in 1929. We're a family-owned and operated business. That's one of the neat things that attracted me to the company. They're still involved. Jeff is our chairman of the board, and still interacts on a daily basis. It's grown up through the family, and it's grown into a great company. And they're an e-commerce company. We sell like nuts and online groceries, essentially, but I mean a wide variety. We have a warehouse where we do a lot of the roasting and the chocolates in-house. So it's all premium chocolate and premium done. I've took a couple of visits, and it's really neat. It's really like a Willy Wonka chocolate factory when you get to see it and smell it and all that stuff. So, but a little about me. I've been here almost 3 years. I'm the payroll and HRIS manager. So anything with the HR technology, I work with our comp and benefits and that type of area. And then, with our goals and reviews as well. So.
Okay, awesome. So how did OKRs come about in nuts.com, right? What's the history? Maybe you can throw a little bit of light on the background. Yeah.
Yeah. So the great thing is that some of the OKR methodology was there kind of prior to me joining. So they kind of went down that path and started formulating that, and the big belief in how Google did some of that, and then they were trying to capture what we needed to track in order to see where our stats were, see where we were failing, see where we could improve. So they kind of had a lot of that in place when I started, which was good.
Okay, great. And in terms of the challenges, right, that OKRs were supposed to solve, according to you, what are the challenges that you think OKRs are great to solve, and specifically in the context of nuts.com? Yeah.
So the biggest challenge I think that we were trying to solve is transparency. We tracked our OKRs in a Google Sheet, which made it somewhat difficult, to access and to everybody to see across the board, like who owned what, when things were updated, how to see the history of stuff, because it was all really inside of a Google Sheet, and it just didn't, it felt like to the leaders that you just couldn't see everything. You couldn't keep a close hand on it. But I mean, that's why we were looking at an OKR type system.
Okay. And so today, how big is nuts.com as an organization in terms of number of people?
So we have right around 525 people on any given day, approximately 120 in ProfitCo. So that's that use like the OKR system and the performance management system. So.
Okay, great. And shifting gears, since you just mentioned performance management system, how long have you been using Profit.co for performance management system, Joey?
So we went with ProfitCo May of 2023, and so we aggressively went to the mid-year review for the performance management system. So like in July, we launched it in June for a July mid-year review.
Oh, okay. So does it mean that you started off with OKRs, reached a certain level of comfort, and then you brought in performance management system? How did that work out actually?
So we kind of combined it all together. So we, because we were lucky enough to have kind of a starter with OKRs, we had that kind of documented on the Google Sheets. and knowing, we had a somewhat of a aggressive timeline. So we signed in May, and then we were going to do mid-year reviews. So the thought was, let's embrace it together, get the system, and just jump right into bring what we had for individual goals, OKRs, everything in the system, and do the mid-year review in Profit Co. Which worked out great. I mean, I think it got everybody exposed to the system, everybody invested in the system, and they went through more in the system with that mid-year review. So,
okay, and the traditional theory, about bringing in OKRs and performance management together, right? The view which folks have said before is that not to tie in performance management and OKRs too closely. I mean, that's the theory, but I know in practice, companies do a wide range of things. But what was the view internally in Nuts.com? Did you discuss the pros and cons of bringing in OKRs and PMS together, or even today, how does it actually look?
So we had a long conversation in early 2023 to say, is that what we really wanted to do? How did we want to identify OKRs, and how much did we want to put that into the performance review? And strategically, we sat down and we decided that's what we wanted to do, and we wanted to make sure it captured everything and gave that feedback back and forth with managers. And so that's why we kind of looked for a system, and we think it works really great. Of course, there's challenges, but the mid-year review, and even we went through year-end review, being able to see that along the way, check in along the way, and then it's kind of like you don't have a surprise at the end of the year. You know what you're being graded on, and you see it, kind of in that review, and be able to capture that.
Okay, great. So from your perspective, it looks like no surprises and staying very objective, right, about the whole process, and OKR seem to have been a good fit, right, there.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And before using Profit.co for PMS, how were you doing the performance management?
So we were using Paycom, our kind of HR payroll provider, but we were limited on transparency across the board. So you like, as a manager, you could only see your direct reports. You couldn't see other people on the team, or there wasn't a way to really do a company level OKR and an individual level. So we struggled with, like, you either had one or the other, or you had to duplicate everything. So that's one of the reasons that it didn't feed into the performance management piece as cleanly as it does with Profit Co.
Great, excellent. And when you rolled out OKRs originally, right, how was the adoption among folks, and were there any questions, or how did people take to it? Right, what has been your experience?
So kind of two pieces to it. So when we originally wrote it out, like kind of with the Google Sheets and whatnot, we at a high level had probably 40, 50 company level OKRs. So we had a probably higher than expected, OKR level, company level, because it's a lot to achieve for a company. So it was a little stressful. So kind of as this part going to Profit Co, we, with some of your team's guidance, we reduced that number down to like 10 or 15 company level, and made a lot more, individual level OKRs, to be able to track some of the lower level on an individual level. But the first round, it was, a lot of late check-ins and not necessarily, checking in till the review. But the company level, I think, was adopted very well to reduce it back, to give transparency, to able to report on it on a weekly basis, to get in a room and see real-time updates, to see, all that data right there, to see the colors, to see, a lot of the stuff across the board. So I think that first quarter was a little tricky, but once we got to the second one, and we kind of got used to the system, it was adopted a lot more.
Oh, okay. So so for you, less is more, right? I guess that became the right philosophy. Okay.
Definitely, and it's the higher level company OKR, so it was a little more, priority on those. And I think that kind of opened the eyes of, okay, here's what we're really focused on, as opposed to there's so many that you kind of lose focus, or what's the priority. So
okay, so interesting. And you also mentioned about the checking in, and initially some challenges with respect to checking in, and That's very natural. We definitely do see that in many companies, and like anything new you try to do, right? Until it becomes a habit, right? Until you really do it consistently again and again, until it becomes a habit, it might take some time. But did you have to do anything to ensure that this became an organizational habit and check-ins were happening? Or what is there anything you'd had to do?
I mean, we started off kind of, the nice and gentle, nudge. Hey, these people forgot their OKRs, and then it kind of got to what we have as a WBR, weekly meeting on those OKRs. Well, senior leadership then kind of reinforced it, and kind of just went up the ladder. And after a few of those, reinforcement meetings, it seemed like it was adopted a little more, and it was hey, we can't make decisions if the data's not there. So, it kind of like, why is it important to have your check-in on time? Well, when we get to the meeting, if we're not aware of it, we can't make informed decisions. So kind of just reinforcing it and what we're doing with the data, it kind of helped with that. We still have a few stragglers here and there, but, overall, it's pretty good check-in.
No, I think this is a great insight, Joey. I think what you have just said is that, the executive communication, right? Executive communication, when it happens consistently and executive is explaining, why it is important, right? Because, they need the data to make informed decisions, right? And also, if executive reviews happen based on the check-ins, then automatically, check-ins start happening, right? So folks realize the value of their check-ins and how it really impacts the overall decision making, right? I think those are very useful insights, and I really appreciate you sharing that, actually. Right. Apart from that, in terms of the tool, using the tool itself, right? Onboarding and adoption, what was the experience for folks, using a tool from Google Sheet?
I mean, I think a lot of people were excited because it was like the biggest thing that we keep preaching, and all the way up to the top, the transparency. We allowed everybody to see everybody's goals and OKRs within the system, so it opens a world of opportunity to see other people's goals or OKRs, and see like, okay, what are they working on, or it gives you some ideas of what, hey, maybe I should structure mine this way. So I think a lot of people were open to it, and probably a little curious on what other people were working on. So like they kind of got a picture into everyone's world. So I think and then just the system naturally flows, so you get a little more user feel than just a Google Sheet. Google Sheet, you're filtering, you're trying to search for stuff. It's easy to maneuver around in the system. So.
No, I think this is amazing, and you've really brought in another very important point in the sense that there's an opportunity for people to get motivated by knowing how others are working on their goals, and getting inspired by that, right? Essentially that's what you're saying, and that's really amazing. And in terms of OKR cycle, do you do it quarterly or annually? How do you actually? What's the cycle at nuts.com?
So for the company level OKRs, we do that on a quarterly basis. So that's that's continued through that, and it's worked really well. It's a weekly check-in on a Monday. We have a full meeting on a Tuesday. So that process is really smooth. The kind of individual OKRs, those are done on 2 halves of the year, so 6-month process. So okay. More of a longer term, but I mean that's worked well and tied into the review process.
Got it. And do you have any process, for reflection by the end of the quarter, and at the company level, and planning for the next quarter? How does that process happen at nuts.com?
Definitely. So we do on a quarterly basis. We reflect on that and kind of do the reset process on some of those. And it's a combination of in the system and outside of the system. We still do some of that outside of the system and have a meeting to kind of reflect on that piece. But it definitely do that on a quarterly basis, because we that helps us prepare for the next quarter as we're kind of finalizing, like, sales goes and, merchandise goes, what we're working on, out of stocks, different stuff like that. You see where we landed, why we may or may not landed there. So you kind of take a look back to look ahead. So definitely a good process.
Okay, got it. And performance management at nuts.com. How often do you do that?
So we do that twice a year, a mid-year review and then a year-end review.
Okay, great. And is the process the same for both, or is it different?
So this past year we did just a manager review because we were getting online, and some of it we were trying to be a little aggressive on our timeline. We did a manager review for the mid-year, and then for year-end we did both self and manager review. And I think they like that much better because the employee has more say-so, can review it themselves and pass that along to the manager.
Got it. So which means, clearly you are using the flexibility, with of the approach, right? Where the mid-year review is more of a quick, maybe a goal check type of a review and maybe a feedback from the manager. And the annual year review is a much more comprehensive review because it includes self-reviews as well, right? And and what's the feedback from folks, managers, and employees? Have they found it reasonably easy to use, or what has been the feedback?
Yeah, a lot of the feedback we got was, is much easier to use than Paycom. The screens and the flow. If they did need to make a change, it was much easier to use. And you can see everything real time. If you were to update a goal or an OKR, it was reflective in there. The comments you could see, so you could see everything in one place. Managers kind of said the same thing. We worked with the team to have mid-year reviews carry over the scores into year-end. So I think managers really like that. You're not started from scratch. You started from what you kind of had in the mid-year and then could adjust. So they really like that feature. So.
Right. Okay, that's awesome. And Joey, to make an OKR program successful, right, in any organization, right, based on your experience at nuts.com, what would you advise? What should people do? The top 3 things, top 5 things that people should do to make their OKR program success?
I would say the one thing that I think has been instrumental in making it successful here is transparency. We debated on allowing everybody to see everybody's. There was some hesitation, like, hey, if I see somebody else fail, I see somebody, I see that it could cause more angst. But I think that's really been the biggest driver of, hey, you see everything, we have nothing to hide. Let's see what we're working on. And, even in a lot of our, what we call all hands meetings, that's brought up, hey, get out there and look around. As I'm training, I'm saying, look back at what people did last year, get ideas for this year. So I think that would be the number one thing. 2, I think the biggest thing is you've got to have, your leadership team's got to be completely involved in the goal setting process. Be aware, we had in the past where there wasn't as much exposure. With Paycom, you couldn't really see what people were working on, but now that leadership is kind of seeing that and overseeing what's in there, it just creates a new world. There's not a huge surprise at the end of the year. Oh, I didn't know you were working on there, or that's not what I thought you were working on. We had a lot more exposure. That's probably the 2 main things, but I really think tying it to the review actually was very successful. So I think that is another one that why am I doing this? OKR. Well, you're going to be held accountable for it, and this is how. It's tied to the review and the bonus structure and whatnot. So that kind of all tied together.
Okay, great, Joey. I think those are amazing insights. Right, I really liked the focus on transparency. Right, and people talk about this a lot, but seeing how well it has really played a role at nuts.com is truly inspirational. And I feel that there's a lot of learning for everyone, right, about how transparency can make a huge impact. And I guess it can really make an impact on the culture and really how overall things unfold, right? That's really amazing. Now, you're probably in the 2 years in your OKR program, right? And what has been your feedback in terms of the value that it has delivered? Right? What do you think are the positive changes that you see? Right? Has it really delivered any great value? What has been your feedback?
Definitely, and I would say a lot of the change over time has probably been like what KPIs to use, like, and a lot of that I think came with the system. We may have been identifying how to measure something a certain way, and then, kind of as we put it in the system and you see, those results come back, it's like, is that really the way we want to measure it? Is that really roll up the way we thought? So we've over time changed the way we've measured. But it gives, I think, management would say the same thing, or senior manager would say the same. It's a deeper dive or deeper look into, how we're doing on sales or marketing, or, the lines of business, how, seeing that detail that we didn't see before. So I think it really, identifying the right measurements brings that out, in an easier way to see.
Are there any anecdotes or stories that you remember, about any specific challenges being overcome, or anything interesting on OKR so far that you can?
I'm trying to think. I mean, I think a lot of it at the beginning is just that insight of like, like we might measure something one way and it's telling the one story, but then if, like we partnered with, Avi and a couple people, and we measured it a different way the next quarter, and it kind of gave a different perspective, like this is how you can make it work, or maybe putting a percentage on a different OKR because that's the, the better way to measure it. I think we've seen some of that, differences that they can kind of, evaluate differently, the different cases.
And that's a very specific insight, and I really appreciate you for sharing that, because choosing the right KPI and key result, right, it makes a lot of difference, and I'm really happy that you brought that out. And overall, what has been your experience with Profit.co, the product, the people, right, the company? What has been your experience so far? Yeah.
I've been impressed with your, your level of service, everything from implementation to, your day-to-day service. We were a little hesitant on that. Was one of the things, we reached out for some references, just, what was this service going to be like? And we were shocked and way above what we expected. We took everything we had, Google Sheets, Paycom, all that, and put into Profit.co, and you all were there step by step. You helped key a lot of that. You helped, I think, import some of it, but like just a hands-on approach. And then even the evaluation of, hey, maybe you can do this better, or maybe you can look at this, So that was just been, a great feel. Like we weren't just the system; it was the system plus, the knowledge and the service, and throughout the process, you all been there. So really impressed with the service.
Sure. And thank you very much, Joey. We're very grateful to have a customer like you. Maybe one final question, right, for customers or companies who are planning to implement OKRs today, right? For doing right the first time, any specific piece of advice that you would like to share for people who are going to start the program?
I would think, probably the biggest thing is, whatever you think you have, if you've got it on paper, you've got it in Google Sheets, share that with the team. That's the one thing that we did learn. We shared some of that before getting in the system. And, like I said, you all were a great, service provider with the system. So like you partnered with us, you went through it, and, we changed a lot of what we did or looked at it a different way. And but I would just like, prepare, and, a lot of the things that you're thinking, ask the question. You all are the experts in the system, but you also know KPIs or OKRs really, really great. So it was a great partnership in that.
Great. So thank you very much, Joey, once again. I think Nuts.com has been a great experience for us as well. And, obviously a great company with great culture, and we're really very happy to have you specifically here and sharing your very valuable insights, right? So thank you very much. And looking forward to continuing these conversations. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it as well. Thank you.